Hi everyone, welcome to the new video. In this video, we are trying to build a simple app that is a dice app where you're basically trying to get a random kind of number. When you click on any of the dice, you will generate a random number over here. So, this is the whole concept of building a dice app. So, let's get started. Okay, now let's start building this app. Before that, I'll explain you the template that I've made, a simple thing. I have just imported the material which help us to take many widgets. All I did is I've kept the whole material app inside the main because I want this whole part to be static. It doesn't change, it won't change, so I want to just keep it inside here. So mainly the material app taking the home, which is a scaffold, and inside that I have made just an app bar and the body. App bar is just I have given the title to that app bar and little style that the text should be white and the background should be black. And the body, inside that body I make sure anything that goes inside is not uh, hidden or something, so I have just enclosed or wrapped inside the safe area glue. And I'm just passing the my app is a stateless widget. And you have to know one thing: if it is a stateless widget, which means the we only expect the data to be static, that's where we use. If you want to keep a data that is usually dynamically changing, then it should be stateful widget. Okay, let's concentrate on that in the further videos. For now, we have created a container, but which is not necessary. We'll remove this. So what we want is we want a two dice placing next to each other, which is in the row direction. So let's create a row widget which will take a children, which means more than one component. That is, it is taking an image. And very important, in this video we are created an image folder. If not, pause the video and create a folder for image. Make sure you have make to change in the pubspecs.yaml. Make the changes in that file and run the pub get. If you have not watched that video, go back and watch and do practice it. So whoever will not watch, I'll give you a quick direction how to do that. First, go here, create a directory called images, and the images sources will be in the description. Download it and you'll get an images of dices, and just import that inside this folder and go to the pubspecs.yaml. Here under this Flutter, make sure you are following the indentation because it's very important in this YAML file. Write the asset. Under this asset, make sure the images, this is the folder that you have created, everything that comes after the images in any file should be have imported. This is what you write in the pubspec.yaml. Once it's done, run the pubget. After that, how do we use that in the main file is, just come here, we have a constructor called image dot asset, and we have to paste the path of the file we wanted. So go back to the images, just right click on the dice one, you'll get a copy path or reference. Copy the path, come back here, paste it right here and save the thing. You'll see, okay, there's actually an image, but we could not able to see because that image is like a white. So let's do one thing, we'll just change the color of this scaffold from white to black. So let's go here, write a background color, make it as a black. The moment when we do or convert this to black, hit save, this will whole completely becomes black. I'm hoping it should be. Here we are. We forgot to hit the hot restart button to make this refresh again because the whole thing is inside this run app, which means that it is not inside the material, I mean inside the stateless. So if we hit save also, it doesn't change. In the last video I told you the reason also, but we are keeping this like this because we don't have to change it. We don't want to build or run this build again and again, which is unnecessary. So to maintain that, we have kept it here. So just change this color to white. Let's make the the app bar as at least white. Okay, let it be in the black only, it doesn't matter. Let it be in the black. Okay, and we want to keep this image. I think we have given a height and width to image. Let's remove this. I'll show you why I did it. See, the moment when I remove the height and width to the image, I'm getting this kind of image where half of the image is being cutted off, and you can see this yellow color stripes. What is this telling us is nothing but it is telling that the image, half of the images that you have pasted or it has been rendered, is removed from there. I mean, it is not able to visible to the image, I mean to the users whoever using it. So it is just giving a warning to developers that the images that you are loading is too big for the screen, so make it a little small or something. The first way you can do this is you can give a certain height and width to this, or else we can do the another way, that is using an expanded class. Yeah, this is an expanded class. As you see here, it says a widget that expands a child of row, column, flex, or a flex that the child fills the available space. So it is saying this, if you want to use an expanded class, it have to be a child of either row or column. So you can only place an expanded class inside the row or the column. This is what they meant. Okay, the first condition. So back in the code, so we already have the row, which means that we can wrap the whole image in expanded. So what this expanded does is it is just expanding the images to their minimum width and height, which nothing but it is just making sure it is not overlapping from the screen. Why do we have to use expanders? See, fine, if we can just give the height and the width. We can just give the width and let it be a 200, which will fit to the screen. I agree. But what if I rotate this? Okay, let's rotate it to the right. Yeah, see how ugly it looks. It is not taking the other part of the screen if a user try to rotate it. So this is the one reason of why we want to use the expand button. Okay, let's just remove the width that we have given here, and let's make sure the image should be unwrapped, which it should be wrapped with the widget called expanded. I think you guys already know about this intention actions. Intention actions are nothing but, I'll just remove this, I'll show you. If I click on this bulb thing, you'll get a set of things that you can wrap it without removing. So I'll just do wrap the widgets and write expanded, which will take a child that is an image. Now if you could see, and expand, it will expand the image depending on the how much width and height it is there. If it is a row, it is making sure it is expanding maximum of horizontal. If this is in the column, it will make sure it is expanded towards the vertical. So this is how the expanded works. Clear? And we want one more image, that is, let's copy the same thing, paste this right below down, which is row, just sitting next to each other. The next thing what we want to do is, see, there's few things that the expanded will provide us, like just reform it again. Okay, few things the expand will provide us. Let's imagine I want this dice 1 to be more like twice as a dice 2. If I want to do that, I can just I can just use a property flex and tell I want the first to be a flex of 2, that is a size of more than the second one of flex of 1. We can just use it. The moment when I hit save, you can see the dice 1 is 2x bigger than the dice 2, right? This is what they mean. If I just remove and just make it as a normal. Okay, the next thing is we want a little padding around it, a little spacing around it. So I'll just wrap the whole thing. See, in the expand, if you see, if I hit on control space, sorry, I'll just enter here in enter. If I hit on enter space and see what are the properties, sorry, not enter space, it's just a control. Okay, now if I hit on the control space on the expand, I can see only two things. One is flex and another one is key. We already know why flex is used and key. And rather than that, we don't have any property like giving a margin, giving a padding or a spacing, anything. So whenever we want a padding, what we can use a padding class. So if I just hit on control enter on that element, I can just set what we want. We wanted a padding, just wrap the whole thing with the padding. Okay. Just make sure that reformatting very important. Just go back. There's few things that we did wrong. Yeah, the one thing that we did wrong is you can't give expand give a padding to the expand. You have to give it for the image, so you have to wrap the whole thing with the padding. Why you can't give it for expand? Because the expand can be only be the child of row. It can't be the child of padding. That is exactly the point. Just make it as 16, which is little small. Very good. And also for this also you do the same thing. Just make sure wrap the whole thing with the padding, and that should be like a 16. Now it is in the perfect thing. Okay. And let's just place it in between. So since it's a row, we have to keep it at vertically in center. We just have to use main axis alignment dot center, which will be placed right in the center. Okay, to make this dice to sit in the center, we just have to wrap the whole row in the center so that it sits in the center. The next thing we want to do is adding the functionality to this button. That is nothing but the next thing we have to do is adding the functionality to this dice, that when I click on this dice, it automatically has to change the images. We already have these 6 images, so instead of 1, let's say instead of 1 I have to make the image 2, which will be on click have to be done. So you have to know one thing, that if I click something, it have to be changed. There should be some action. So we have to provide an action to it. How can we do it? By enclosing or wrapping the whole image in the button. So see, always if you could remember, in an app or in website, they usually give an button which helps the user to know that they have to click. Right? Same way, if you could see the dice game, usually people by default they start clicking it, thinking that the dice will automatically randomly run, right? To make that functionality, to make this button to work on the user's click or user interaction, just make sure you wrap the image asset in the under the like a button thing. Okay, if you could see about the buttons in the Flutter, there's many kinds of types of button there. They're like elevated button, text button, outline button, floating button, icon, and a fill button. If I just go inside the button, the docs of Flutter, you'll see the button class. I'll just run or search for the button. When I hit on this, if you could just go through the widget components, that is material components of widget. In the button section, you can see there's a common button, there's a floating button, there's extended floating button, icon button, segmented buttons. All this like a kind of buttons that you usually see that in your Android or iOS cell phones. So if I click on this common button, this can be like elevated. Elevation is like just an it looks like the button is popped out. The filled button and can be outline or a text button. So in this case, let's try to use this elevated button. So how do we use? Just to write a elevated button, and the most required property is the on press, and next is a child. The child, it usually be the image. So let's wrap it with the elevated button. Back in the code, so what you'll do here, just click on the image, make sure you are hitting Control Enter, where you're wrapping the widget with the elevated button. and reform it, and it is throwing an error because, as I told, there's a compulsory one of the property that is on press. On press is the one of the major property that you have to it is a required property that it should be. Okay, and I have included on press property and have written an parenthesis and a curly braces. Maybe if you have not followed the DAT series, which I thought about simple basics on DAT, that is a functions, you might be wondering what it is. So let's quickly understand a function and what it is, what it is means. Here, if you could observe, Datpad is one of the compiler where you can write a Dat code and you can see how it runs. You can just practice the thing. So the main is also a function, and in the code also you have seen everything that is inside the main will be run. So main is also a function. Okay. Usually, how do you write a function is, if the function doesn't return anything, you usually write a void and you give a name to that function. Let's say click or something, and it should be enclosed with a parenthesis followed with a parenthesis, then the curly braces. This parenthesis is like it usually takes up the argument when you pass. This parenthesis is to take up the parameters when you call, so that you can pass the argument. So there's a difference between parameters and arguments. When you are defining something, you are saying that there's a two elements that have to be passed. Here we call it as parameter when you call the function, and if you pass the actual value, that is called arguments. So that's why it is like parentheses are here, and anything that is have to be followed or it should be done, that will be enclosed within this flower bracket. Usually we kind of use the function so that instead of using or writing the same line of code, if you just use the function once, which can be just reused multiple times instead of using a lot. It's basic. We mainly use function because to make sure that a line of code or a number of line of code is not repeated again and again. Instead of that, we can just use a function and call it like many times, and that's the main agenda, just to make a line of code or reduce the line of code. So I'll just try to print the a statement called button is clicked, and let's see. So we have created a function, but how do you call the function? As I told, why do you create this function? It's a simple thing, so that I can define everything that I want inside the function once, so that I don't want to repeat it again. I'll just call the function by its name. It's like a single line. In the single line, I can call any or make the work done. So how do you call the function? By the name of the function. The moment when I do and hit the run, what the expected output should be, it have to print an output called button is clicked. So here is the output. So, and this kind of function what you are seeing, where it has the name, it is called as named function. This function has the name, that name is called click. Let's say if I just remove the name to this function, then what it is called as, it's called as anonymous function. It doesn't have the name. The function doesn't have the name, is called as anonymous function. This is the same syntax that you are seeing in the property of the button. Let's go back to the code and check. Okay, if you could see in the on press, there's a function. You are basically calling a function, and it is an anonymous function. Okay, we have to tell what we want to do when we click on this button. And if you see the UI here, as soon as I wrap the whole thing with the button styles, that is like normally it is rounded, and the color has been implemented on this dice, and by default it has kind of padding that makes the dice little little less or small, which is not, it is not basically looking good. And to remove this style, we can just go here and we can remove everything. But instead of removing this, let's do one thing. we don't want this button. We want something that can be helped us with on pressing something and running some activities when we click on it. At the same time, we don't want all this style. We want a plain kind of button. So that what we'll do, we'll just first remove this elevated button. Let's remove this widget. So we have one more thing called gesture detection. It is called as gesture detection. Just hit Control and Alt Enter. The moment when we hit on Alt Enter, wrap the widget, and that is called as gesture detector. So when we use this gesture detector, it also has the property on press. You don't have to worry. So if I just hit enter, control space, where I get on tap, on long press, behavior, drag style. So this has many things. Gesture is nothing but some kind of activity. So what we want on tap, when we tap on this image, we want kind of activity to be done. So instead of using button which has a default styling on it, and then removing that style doesn't actually is it's a big long process. So let's always use something which is small and keep everything small little. Okay, let's try to use a gesture detector. It does the same thing. So on tab, what we have to do, we have to send a function, and it's a anonymous function. So for now, let's try to print it as a left dice is clicked. Okay, the moment when we click on this, we want to print in the output that the left dice is printed. Okay, let's try check this off. Save the thing. Okay, hit on the thing, make sure it is running, and you can see here left dice is click. We'll click it again and check this. The moment I click, you can see in the console where you are getting a print statement of left dice is clicked. So it is working then, right? What we have to do next, in the moment we clicked on this dice, we want to change this dice from to 1 to a randomly some kind of dice. Let's say for now we want to change the dice 1 to 2. So for that, let's create a variable. If you are not aware of a variable, variables are nothing but it is kind of a container where it stores the element and we can reuse it again. Let's quickly go and recall the variables. Okay, let's see what is the variable. Variables are like a container, as I told. It is going to store the values. Why it is storing the values? So that we can reuse it somewhere again. Okay, every element that you see in your data is kind of stored somewhere. It have to be stored. So how do we store a variable? Var is the one of the keyword. The moment when you create or write the var keyword, it will create automatically a container, and after that you can write a name to the variable. Let's say a name or a user, and it's followed by the assignment operators, and let's give a name to the user. Okay, so basically we have created a variable that is a user, and let's try to print it. Let's try to print and see is that a variable is stored. When I hit on the run button, what should be the output? It should be the username. Here we got an output, and it is throwing an error, not an error, it is warning us that the variable name should be lower camel case. So yeah, let's try to use it. Just make it a little lowercase. Just make sure the first letter should be the small and the second letter should be like a capital. If we turn the run, it gives the same output. Okay, the next thing is, as I told, the variable is kind of a container and we can make use of it whenever we want. Same concept that we are using it. And if you have not watched the video or that basic, try to go through that video once, because it's so important to know why we use var, can we use it dynamically. And I want to show you one more thing that makes you curious. Let's try. The next question would be, can we able to change this variable? Yeah, we can able to change. let's write a user to Sarah or someone, and if I try to print the same thing, what will be the output? According to me, the output will be, first it will be printed as Likita, then it will be printed as Sarah, because we have modified the name into Sarah. We are just renaming the values. So when you rename the value, you don't have to use a keyword var, because var is only used to create a variable. I think it's clear. Okay. Now let's do one more thing. You guys maybe probably heard of string, numbers, etc, etc. These are the data types, right? What are the data types in data? It's simple. This is string. String will always be enclosed within the double quotes or a single quotes, and there's an int. Int is nothing but an string is always enclosed with the double quotes, and hint is nothing but a numbers, and double it is for the decimal numbers, and boolean it can only store either a true or a false. So now instead of storing a string, let's try to store a integer. And the moment when I write integer, it will throw an error, because you have to know one thing, that is a statically typed language. What do you mean by statically typed? Is the moment when you create the variable, by default it is going to take this variable as string. What it takes, whenever you try to reassign the variable user, it will assume that what the data that it have to be stored is only string. It have to be string. It can't be any other thing. That's why it's called statically typed. When the other language like JavaScript, which is dynamically typed, these things works because they don't usually care about what data type you are actually giving. But the data is statically typed, which cares a lot about the what type of data you are passing and everything. So the moment when you create a variable and you actually gave the value to it, that value whatever it could be, if it is a string, it will assume that user can only take up the string. So to avoid this, it is recommended to use a particular kind of data type instead of var. What do I mean by data type is, let's say you can write a string which is a written type of the user, so which only takes up the string, which is just telling us you can only take the string. But you can even ask the way, is that the another way we can we make this dynamic? Yeah, we can make this dynamic by just writing user name and keeping it blank. I mean, you're not assigning to any value. And now if you are trying to reassign it to a Sarah, or you can even try to reassign that to be a number, it doesn't matter. Okay, which is nothing but, in the first you are just making the variable dynamic. Now the username is a dynamical value which takes a different kind of data, but it is not recommended in Flutter or in the Dart. It is not a good way to do. You have to try avoiding var. Try to use a specific kind of data you are trying to do. If the data is int, make sure you are just see, the moment when you pass the data type, return type as int, it will throw an error for Sarah because it is completely string and it is okay with the numbers. So try to use this. Okay, this all about the variable. Do check the basic videos. Now back in the code. So let's create a variable that is going to tell the dice number for now. Okay, it's how do we create a variable? And you have to know one thing about this stateless widget. We all know the first thing it runs is it is trying to build. So if you want to change anything, it have to be inside this build. It will be rerunning again. So let's create here. Let's create a variable called dice number, and let's assign it to 5. For now, let it be 5. So instead of writing a 1, we can use a string interpolation. What is this? String interpolation is nothing but, whenever you want to write a variable inside string, we can just write a $sign followed by the variable name. Okay, this actually works. If I save the thing, you'll get an 5. See, if I change this to 2 and hit save, you'll get a 2. So this is how you play with the things. Okay, now let's say when I click on the button, like when I click on this dice 2, when I click on this, I want to change that to 5. So it's just an assumption. Now it is 2, right? We have just make it as a static. We are giving it hard coding the values. The dice number, let it be 2. And the moment when I click on this button, click on this dice, I want to make it as 5. That is, I want to change this dice number to the 5. Okay, and when I click on this, but I can't see any changes in the value. Let's print it and let's see, does the value actually changed? So if I write a dice number and if I try to print it, let's say it's a dice number, make sure you end this statement. There's something wrong, we'll check. Okay, too many positional argument 1 and 2. Okay, let's see where is the error coming from. Okay, the error is I've written the string called dice number, but I've not, the thing I did is I've just gave this comma, which is wrong. As I told, I can just write the interpolation. I can just write a string, okay, dice number and a $sign followed by the dice number, which is more than enough. It is not like a C. So if I just save the thing and if I hit the, okay, if you could see in the console, left dice is clicked, which is the moment it is done. The next is dice is now converted into 5. Okay, now if I just reload the whole thing, now the dice will be changed to, any answers? 2 itself, because the moment when it build, it will again go back to the same thing, that is 2. Okay, so I'll just go back again. I'll just repeat what I said. What did we do? Instead of giving a dice 1, we just took this number and made this as a variable, so we can manipulate or play with it. Clear? The second thing what we did, when we click on this, we made sure it will change the number 2 to 5. Yeah, it is changing, but it is not changing the images. That is because we are using stateless widget. As I told, stateless widget are something where the data or the widgets are not changing. Let's say if you want this to be in row, it will be in the row because it's in the stateless widget. We always make sure the stateless widget, whatever the things inside the stateless widget, it have to be static. So what do you think now? We have to keep that inside the stateful widget. If you want to change the images, we want to place that inside stateful, not a stateless. So just remove the whole thing here and now write a stateful widget, name the same as my app, and just replace the placeholder with this, and we are done. And just make sure you are creating a dice number of variable. Just come down here, create var a dice number, give a number to it. Okay, observe the stateful widget carefully. There are mainly 2 parts. The first part that you are seeing here, this is a simple widget that normally stateful widget also is been there. The second is a state. Second is a state part, which is actually going to control what is the state or what it have to be rendered. So what the state does is it just checks what the variable it is changed and it is going to update it. Okay, now we have a variable. We are just storing the which number it have to be stored. Just hit the save. Yeah, now it is 5. Now it is clearly done. Okay, what we want to do is when we on click it, we are making it a 5. Let's change it to 2. When we on click on this, we have to change from 5 to 2. Yeah, it is changing, but in the visually it is not changing. So when we use stateful widget, we have to make sure there should be something it have to be having control over. I mean, it have to track state, right? We have to tell, okay, change this number whenever it sees, and whenever it want to change, whenever the data have to change it, we have to tell, we have to set the state of this to the 2. Why we are making this as 2? Because we are telling the stateful widget that whenever you see you are setting the state, that is you are setting a number or setting some state to something, wherever you see this variable right here, you want to make that changes. So using a set state, we are changing the state of the stuff. So I'll just reload it again, which will be in it will go back to the initial state, that it will be in the 5. Okay, then we'll hit on the control. Now the dice changes the state from 5 to 2. This is how powerful the stateful and stateless widgets are. Okay, but we are successfully did with the functionality that if we click on the dice, it have to change the image of the dice, that is from 5 to 2. But don't you think we are hard coding the values that we are telling it have to change from 5 to 2, but the user doesn't have the access to the code, so it have to work in the user side of interaction. So what we have to do is, we should not hard code this value, we have to randomly generate this value. So to randomly generate this value, we have a library called math. So we have this library called dart math, which actually gives a random, it generates actually a random number. If you could observe here, it can be generates a random number creating a random dot, a next double or a next int. So let's try to use this. First we have to make sure it is imported. Just copy this, let's import this, and we'll try to use that. Back in the code, let's first import the math. Okay, let's come back here where we are trying to do the hard coding value. Let's try to use a random and dot. We have a few options, like we can do next int, next boolean, next double, next string, but what kind of a value that we are storing? So as I told in the variable, try to use a particular data type that you are actually storing the value. If you could see, we are storing a value that is a int. So instead of var, let's use it a int, so which expect us to be an int. So we are using a next int, and it takes a values. Values are maximum how much we have. In our dice, we have a 6 faces. So maximum it can go a 6. So the moment when I click on this, I can see a values that is going from 1 to 6, and in between, if you could see, there's some kind of error. Do you know why? Because this random dot int can generate a value between 0 to 1, but we don't have a dice that has a 0. So now what we have to do, we have to generate the value that is between 1 to 6. To generate a value 1 to 6, we just have to add plus 1 to it. The moment when we do, it's just like an array, it just passes to the next one. And if I save this, and since we are saving it, it is just saving the UI, it is not re-rendering, just do hot restart, so it goes to the initial position, that it becomes 5. Then if I hit on this, you don't see the error anymore because of the changes that we did. I think you're clear with this. So by this we can by clicking on the button, we can just randomly create, generate, or change the value. So what are the things that we made use of? We understood how the variable, why the variable, we just want a variable for storing something so that we can easily manipulate it in the next step. Okay, and we understood about this function. It's an anonymous function, and we are left with another right dice. So instead of giving a dice number, just give it as a left dice number. Copy this paste it all over where you see. Now we are left with the right dice. So pause the video, take this as a challenge, create one more variable called a right dice number, just paste it here and replace with that variable, and don't just copy and paste, try to make it on your own. Okay, back in code, I've just created a right dice number where I've made it initially 1, and I've just added a gesture detector on, I've wrapped the whole thing with the gesture detector, and the moment when I click, I'm just setting the state. What do you mean by setting the state? I'm just changing the state of that, so it rebuilds the state also. Clear? Okay, but as I told, we learned the two concept of that is a variable and a function. So if you could observe in the both of the dice, where we are trying to do the same thing in the set state. What we are trying to do? We are trying to set the variable of both left dice and the right dice as a randomly generated variable, right? Can you use the function method? Why do you use the function method? Instead of repeating the same line of code again and again, we can just write a function once and just use the function again. So take it as a challenge, pause for a minute, pause the video and remove the entire code, create a function, paste it here and try to run the function here. Okay, let's try to do the function. Let's create a function. Right, come back here. Down here, let's create a function, void, give a function a name, run the dice or roll the dice. What it have to do? We'll just cut the state here, come back here. So it is basically doing a left dice roll, and we want to also do a right dice roll. Just take out this, paste it here. And here what we can do, we'll just remove all the print statement, unnecessary things. I'll just have to call this function. What is the function? It's a roll dice. Make sure you end the statement, and for the second dice also you keep the same thing. Here we are done. So let's try and check if this works. Just restart again, where it starts to the initial position on 5 and 1. Yeah, here we are. I click on this. You can see on one click both the dice is changing its randomness, like changing the values, because we are trying to put or trying to use the same function, where in the same function what we are doing, when I click on one function, one dice, where you can see randomly generating. Yeah, it is actually randomly generating. So both the things does the same thing. It is also following the same function. It is also following the same function. The same function, I'm saying right should also change the randomly and left should also change randomly. So here it completes the challenge. So my recommendation or my suggestion is, try to do it without seeing. Try to understand why we use actually the variable. We need variable. It's like a carry bag. If you don't have this variable, where will I actually manipulate this data again? We want this variable to store and to manipulate or change the value or reassign that value. So variables plays very important role. And as a function, we want a functions because, see, as we told, the roll dice, we are doing the same thing in the both stuff, right? So we just placed it in the one function. So I just repeated the names. The number of lines also got decreased. So this is a use of a function. So that's all for today's video. Let's catch up for the next video.